Hi, this is Bobby Nash. I'm the author of Snow Falls. Just wanted to read a little bit of the chapter, the opening chapter for you. Okay. You can find Snow Falls in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Published by Ben Books. Okay, I'm going to read a little here. And Abraham Snow knew he was about to die, and the thought of it pissed him off to no end. Everything had been going according to plan. Before it all went to hell, everything was moving forward as laid out. The meat was set, all of the details had been checked and rechecked, every I had been dotted, every T crossed. It had taken him years to get this far inside, but he was finally getting a face-to-face with Miguel Ortega. The man was a ghost, a legend. Ortega was a phantom that law enforcement operatives all over the world had been chasing for decades. No one had even come close to catching the elusive Miguel Ortega, despite the fact that he was rumored to have his hands in everything from the drug trade to arms dealings to human trafficking and murder. Murder for hire. There was a good reason for this, however, and Agent Snow was one of the select few people alive that knew the truth. Miguel Ortega was an alias. It was a code name frequently used by less than reputable men and women who preferred to remain anonymous while keeping their questionable business dealings close to the vest. This alias provided the Ortegas of the world with a sense of security. Snow had finally made it past the middlemen and low-level goons inside the organization belonging to the Miguel Ortega he was after. That's how Abraham Snow, in his alias as James Shepard, found himself standing on the blisteringly hot tarmac of a tiny smuggler's airfield in the middle of a South American jungle, wearing a suit, sans tie, and standing next to a beautiful woman named Daniela Cordoza. She was Ortega's right hand and was as dangerous as she was alluring in her form-fitting custom dress. They both stood out of place against the jungle backdrop. Snow didn't trust her, but he needed Cordoza to get to her employer. One minute everything was going according to plan. The next minute was not so good. Time moved as though it was trapped in amber. The man in the white suit was all smiles as they walked to meet one another across the airship's tarmac. Snow was finally getting his face-to-face. It was the first step in the final chapter of his undercover operation. "Agent Snow," the man said once he was within earshot. It took half a second to realize what he had said, and Snow did a double take. Ortega had called him by his real name, Abraham Snow, not the James Shepard alias he had been working under for the past 18 months. How the hell does he know my name? "I think you've got me mixed up with someone else, Mr. Ortega. My name is," Snow started, but it was no use. He could tell by the man's demeanor that there would be no fast talking his way out of this one. His cover was blown. Somehow, some way, someone had sold him out. The list of possible rats was small. Only a handful of people knew his true identity, and most of them he had known and trusted for years. His mind raced through the possible scenarios. A leak inside the Pentagon? Or the CIA, maybe? A compromised asset? Or a mistake he had made himself, a slip-up that had given him away. Each of those played across his mind in less time than it took to realize how deep in the shit he was at that moment. He was all alone. There was no backup close by, no one to swoop in and save the day. Snow reached for the gun tucked into his belt behind his back. Ortega moved faster. Still smiling, he pulled the Glock 30 from a shoulder holster and squeezed the trigger. Snow felt the first impact, but it wasn't until the second that he realized he had been shot. The next thing he knew, he was knocked off his feet, flying backward through the air. Snow dropped to the asphalt, unmoving, blood leaking out of two very large holes in his body. A tingling sensation in his extremities told him that the blood loss was substantial. Despite the humid climb, he felt a chill run through him. He was dying. Ortega had only fired 3 shots. The first clipped Agent Snow's arm, spinning him around. The second missed completely. The third, however, hit its mark, center mass. Snow stared up into a brilliant blue sky punctuated with a few fluffy white clouds as blood pooled beneath him. Above him, Ortega and his companion stood and looked down at him. He was smiling, but she was not. That surprised him. Although they had been intimate with one another, neither had pretended it was anything more than just a physical convenience. For him, she had simply been another asset to get him closer to his target. Well, mission accomplished. He had found Ortega. Surprisingly, he didn't finish the job. After a moment, Miguel Ortega shook his head, turned, and walked away, out of Snow's line of sight, presumably back to his plane. Daniela Cardoza stayed a moment longer, and he thought he saw sadness in her eyes, although he couldn't be sure of anything as he lay there gasping for air. And then she was gone. He assumed she had a plane to catch. Snow's vision grayed around the edges as he struggled to catch his breath, then, surprisingly, followed the sensation of flight as if gravity no longer held sway over him. Trees and clouds flashed past his vision at dizzying speeds until gravity reasserted itself and he crashed back to Earth. And just like that, it was all over. All that remained was darkness and pain. And that's the opening to Snow Falls, which you can find now at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, my website, my online store. The week of March 21st to the 28th, the ebook versions of all of the Snow books are 99 cents, and you can find those, and I will have links in the description here as well. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll check out the book.